Real heroes don't wear capes. Before the city woke up, before the first buses filled the streets, and before the office lights painted the skyline, Daniel Brooks was already awake. Every morning began the same way. At 4:30 a.m., the alarm rang only once. Daniel never needed a second reminder. 24 years of working construction had trained his body to rise before sunrise, even on weekends. His knees ached before his eyes fully opened, and the familiar pain in his shoulders reminded him exactly how many years he had spent carrying steel, lifting concrete forms, and climbing unfinished buildings. He sat quietly on the edge of the bed for a moment, listening. Silence. That was his favorite sound. It meant his daughter was still asleep. Daniel slipped into the kitchen without turning on the lights. He knew every step of the tiny apartment by memory. The floor creaked near the refrigerator, the cabinet door always stuck halfway, and the coffee maker rattled like it might finally give up every single morning. He smiled. "So do I," he whispered while patting the old machine. Within minutes, the smell of fresh coffee filled the apartment. On the refrigerator door hung dozens of magnets collected over the years. None of them came from vacations. Daniel had never been able to afford one. Instead, every magnet represented somewhere his daughter had dreamed of visiting one day. Paris, New York, Tokyo, Rome. She had bought them at a flea market for 50 cents each because, as she liked to say, dreams didn't have to be expensive. Daniel wrapped 2 sandwiches in wax paper before opening a small metal box hidden inside the highest kitchen cabinet. Inside lay neat stacks of $20 bills. He counted them carefully. $460. Not much, but every bill represented another hour spent working overtime. Another Saturday missed. Another aching muscle ignored. Another promise kept. Emily wanted to attend a summer architecture camp at the state university. The tuition was $900. Daniel was halfway there. He placed the money back inside the box as gently as if it were made of glass. Behind him came a sleepy voice. "You counted it again." Daniel turned. Emily stood in the hallway wearing oversized pajamas and messy dark hair that somehow managed to look beautiful no matter how little sleep she got. "I was just checking. You check every morning. It keeps growing." She walked over and hugged him from behind. "You know," she said, "it's okay if I don't go." Daniel didn't answer. "You've already worked enough." Still nothing. She sighed. "Dad." Finally, he looked at her. "When your mother was alive, we promised each other something." Emily already knew the story, but she let him continue. "We promised that no matter what happened, we'd never let money decide how big your dreams could be." Emily rested her head against his shoulder. "I miss Mom." "So do I." Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Grief had changed over the years. It no longer screamed. It whispered, sometimes through an old photograph, sometimes through an empty chair, sometimes through silence over breakfast. Daniel finally cleared his throat. "Go back to bed. What time will you be home?" "Probably 7. You promised we'd finish my bridge model tonight." "I remember. You promised." "I know." She smiled. "I'll hold you to it." The Horizon project could be seen from almost every corner of the city. When completed, it would become the tallest residential tower in the entire state. People admired the elegant glass design. Investors admired the profits. Politicians admired the headlines. Construction workers admired something else. The challenge. Daniel had worked on skyscrapers before, but nothing this complicated. Nearly 700 workers rotated through the site every day. Tower cranes swung enormous steel beams through the air with breathtaking precision. Concrete pumps stretched toward the clouds. Elevators climbed inside unfinished shafts where there were still no walls. The entire project looked impossible. Yet every day, ordinary men and women made impossible things stand upright. Daniel scanned his ID card and entered through the security gate. "Morning, old man." Luis Alvarez tossed him a cup of coffee. Daniel caught it without looking. "I'm only 12 years older than you." 12 years is ancient in construction. "I'm still stronger." Luis laughed. "We've had this argument before. And I keep winning." Luis shook his head while adjusting his safety harness. At 28 years old, he had enough energy for 3 people. He joked constantly, worked harder than anyone, and talked even faster than he worked. Pictures of his wife and newborn son covered the inside of his locker. Every lunch break included at least one new story about diapers. Daniel secretly enjoyed every one of them. The morning safety meeting lasted 15 minutes. weather conditions, wind speed, equipment inspections, emergency procedures. The same routine every day. Some workers stopped paying attention after hearing it hundreds of times. Daniel never did. He knew something many younger workers hadn't learned yet. Most accidents happened on ordinary days. Not because something extraordinary occurred. Because someone became comfortable. Comfort was dangerous. Routine was dangerous. Assuming everything would be fine. That was the most dangerous thought of all. By 7:30, Daniel and Luis were working on the 61st floor. The city stretched endlessly below. Cars looked like tiny toys. People looked like moving dots. One careless step would end everything. Daniel loved heights. Not because they were thrilling. Because they demanded respect. Respect kept people alive. As he inspected one section of temporary support framing, something caught his attention. A bolt. Small. Ordinary. Barely noticeable. He crouched. The bolt wasn't cracked. It wasn't missing. It wasn't loose. It was bent. Only slightly. Most people would have ignored it. Daniel didn't. He placed one hand against the steel column. Waited. Then closed his eyes. Luis watched curiously. What? Daniel didn't answer. He tapped the steel lightly with his wrench. The sound echoed differently than it should have. Not dramatically. Just enough. I don't like it. Luis leaned closer. It looks fine. It doesn't sound fine. You can hear that. I've spent 24 years listening. Luis looked again. I still don't see it. You will. Daniel stood. Come on. They walked directly toward the site supervisor. Mark. Sullivan was reviewing delivery schedules on his tablet when Daniel approached. Morning. Morning. Daniel pointed toward the eastern support frame. I need engineering to inspect that section. Mark barely looked up. What happened? I found a bent connection bolt. So replace it. I want the entire frame checked. Mark sighed. We're pouring concrete in 2 hours. Then delay it. We've already lost 3 days because of weather. I know. You understand what another delay costs. Daniel nodded. Less than a funeral. Mark finally looked up. His expression hardened. Engineering signed off yesterday. They didn't inspect this. They inspected the structure. They inspected yesterday. Mark folded his arms. So what exactly are you saying? I'm saying I don't trust that frame. Based on one bent bolt. Daniel held his gaze. No. Based on the fact that steel always tells the truth. Around them, conversations slowly stopped. Workers pretended to organize tools while secretly listening. Mark rubbed his forehead. You've been doing this a long time. I have. And you're willing to stop an entire floor because of a feeling? Daniel answered immediately. I'm willing to stop an entire project if I think someone won't go home tonight. Mark looked at the workers watching nearby, then back at Daniel. Finally. Fine. He grabbed his radio. Engineering to 61. Luis smiled quietly. You really don't care if people get angry. Daniel picked up his tool belt. They can be angry tomorrow. I just need them alive today. Contip, de la Coang 1.6002, Dao Tien Quatrian. O Fan Tip Theo, Quatrian Sed Tang Veo Su Ko Lon Qua Horizon Tower, Mo Dao Chao Treo Va Tip Tuc Lin Mok, Kong Ko Part Hey Chapter. The engineers arrived 15 minutes later. 3 of them examined the support frame while the entire crew waited impatiently. Mark stood nearby, checking his watch every few seconds. Delays meant money, and money was a language every construction company understood. Daniel stood silently beside Luis. He wasn't hoping to be right. He was hoping to be wrong. After nearly 20 minutes, one of the engineers called the others over. He pointed toward the upper connection plate. Another engineer climbed onto the temporary platform and removed the protective cover. His expression changed immediately. What is it? Mark asked. The engineer didn't answer at first. Instead, he reached inside the joint and pulled out another bolt. Then another. Then another. Each one showed tiny fractures around the threads. Hairline cracks. Almost invisible. The senior engineer slowly turned toward Mark. Who reported this? Mark looked at Daniel. He did. The engineer walked over. Mr. Daniel Brooks. You may have just prevented a structural failure. The entire floor became silent. The engineer explained that an entire shipment of high-strength bolts had been improperly heat-treated at the factory. Under increasing load, microscopic fractures had begun spreading through several connection points. Once the concrete pour added thousands of additional pounds, the frame could have failed. Not immediately, but suddenly. Work stopped across 3 levels while every bolt from the shipment was inspected. 47 defective bolts were discovered. Luis stared at Daniel. You saw one. Daniel shook his head. I heard one. Mark approached quietly. I owe you an apology. Daniel shrugged. You owe the crew a safe workplace. For the first time since they had met, Mark smiled. Fair enough. By noon, work resumed. The delay had cost the company nearly $80,000. No one complained anymore. During lunch, workers from other crews stopped by Daniel's table. Some simply nodded. Others shook his hand. One young apprentice sat beside him. How did you know? Daniel looked at the teenager. How long have you been working construction? For months. And before that? Nothing. Daniel nodded. I've been listening to buildings longer than you've been alive. The apprentice smiled. I hope I get that good someday. Daniel took another bite of his sandwich. You won't. The boy looked disappointed. You'll get better. The afternoon passed quietly. Clouds gathered over the city. Weather forecasts predicted heavy rain before sunset. Daniel and Luis were assigned to inspect temporary scaffolding on the 65th floor before everyone left for the evening. Wind pushed against the unfinished structure. Plastic safety sheets snapped loudly against steel beams. Luis looked toward the dark sky. I don't like those clouds. They don't care. They should. Daniel laughed. You complain more than my daughter. Impossible. Trust me. They finished inspecting the final section just after 6. Most crews had already gone home. Only maintenance teams and security remained inside the building. Daniel checked his phone. A message from Emily. Don't forget our bridge tonight. Smiling face with smiling eyes, he smiled. Luis noticed. Emily. Yeah. Architecture camp. I'm getting closer. How much left? Daniel hesitated. About $400. Luis whistled. That's a lot. We'll get there. You always do. Daniel slipped the phone back into his pocket. Let's go home. At exactly 6:17 p.m., the emergency alarm sounded. It wasn't the normal warning tone used for drills. It was continuous. Urgent. Every light on the floor began flashing red. Luis stopped walking. That's not good. Smoke drifted beneath a service door only 30 feet away. Then came the radio. Attention, all personnel. Static interrupted the message. Fire reported. Lower mechanical levels. More static. Evacuate immediately. Daniel's expression changed instantly. Move. Workers poured from different sections of the building. Security guards directed everyone toward the western emergency stairwell. People moved quickly, but calmly. Construction workers practiced evacuation procedures every month. No one panicked. Not yet. The stairwell filled with nearly 60 people descending together. 40 floors. 39. 38. Everything seemed under control. Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the stairwell. Someone shouted. Another person stumbled. Emergency lighting flickered on just long enough for everyone to see smoke climbing rapidly upward. Cough. Cough. The air changed. Hotter. Heavier. Daniel looked upward. Smoke should have been moving away from them. Instead, it was chasing them. Faster, someone yelled. People continued descending. Then, a loud metallic crash echoed below. The entire staircase shook violently. Dust filled the air. The line stopped moving. What happened? Keep going. We can't. Daniel pushed carefully through the crowd. About 2 floors below, a section of temporary steel decking had collapsed into the stairwell. Twisted beams blocked every step. Smoke poured through the opening. No one could pass. Mark arrived moments later. Can we clear it? Daniel looked once. No. Other stairwell. They climbed back up 2 levels before crossing toward the eastern side of the building. More smoke. More alarms. The eastern stairwell door refused to open. Daniel tried again. Nothing. It warped. What? The heat. The steel frame around the door had expanded. It was sealed shut. Behind them, smoke thickened. Workers began coughing harder. Someone whispered, "We're trapped." No one answered. Because everyone was thinking the same thing. Daniel forced himself to stay calm. Panic spread faster than fire. He walked toward the open edge of the building. Rain had begun falling outside. Far below, fire engines surrounded the tower. Flashing red and blue lights reflected across the wet streets. The highest ladder reached only halfway up the building. Too low. Much too low. Luis stood beside him. What do we do? Daniel looked across the skyline. Hundreds of feet away stood another office tower. Lower. Older. Close enough to see people gathering on its roof. Not close enough to jump, but close enough for something else. His eyes slowly lifted toward a storage platform above them. Temporary aluminum trusses. 30-foot maintenance sections. A dangerous thought formed. Then another. He measured the distance in his mind. Wind speed. Weight. Anchoring points. Load capacity. Possible deflection. Luis watched his face. I know that look. What look? The one that gets us into trouble. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked back at the frightened workers filling the mechanical floor. Electricians. Welders. Painters. Laborers. Young apprentices. Men only weeks away from retirement. Fathers. Mothers. People with families waiting at dinner tables. People expecting them home. Daniel finally spoke. I think. He looked once more toward the neighboring rooftop. We're going to build one more bridge. Smoke rolled across the unfinished floor. Somewhere below, another explosion echoed through the building. The fire wasn't waiting. Neither could they. Daniel turned away from the edge and faced the workers. Listen to me. The room quieted. We have one possible route out. It is dangerous, but staying here is worse. Mark stepped closer. What are you planning? Daniel pointed toward the temporary trusses stored above the mechanical level. We build a bridge to the office tower. Several workers stared at him as if he had suggested flying. That gap is almost 30 feet, someone said. The trusses are 32. The wind will tear them away. Not if we anchor them correctly. Mark looked toward the neighboring building. People had gathered on its rooftop. Firefighters were among them, signaling with lights. They can help secure the far side, Daniel continued. But we need to move now. Another explosion shook the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling. The decision was made for them. Mark lifted his radio. Everyone who can carry weight, move to the storage platform. Electricians, gather every heavy cable you can find. Ironworkers, bring clamps, chains, and connection plates. Carpenters, find anything we can use as rollers. The workers separated immediately. Fear had frozen them. A task set them free. Daniel and Luis climbed to the storage platform. 3 aluminum truss sections lay stacked beneath a plastic sheet. Each weighed hundreds of pounds. They were designed to support exterior maintenance equipment, not a line of people suspended between 2 buildings. Daniel inspected the welded joints. They'll hold, he said. Luis looked at the burning floors below. For how long? Long enough. They lowered 2 trusses onto metal pipes and rolled them toward the western opening. The workers moved with remarkable discipline. Nobody asked who was in charge. Nobody argued about job titles. They simply listened to the person who appeared to understand what had to be done. The electricians twisted heavy cable into doubled safety lines. Ironworkers joined the trusses side by side and reinforced them with crossbars. Carpenters built a narrow crawling surface from temporary planks. Mark coordinated with the firefighters on the neighboring rooftop through hand signals and brief bursts of radio communication. Wind is 26 miles an hour, he said. Daniel tightened another clamp. It will get worse. How many people do we have? 53. Can the bridge hold them? Not at once. Daniel stood. One person at a time. Everyone wears a harness. Each person clips onto the safety cable before moving. No standing. No rushing. Smoke began sliding across the ceiling. The fire had climbed another floor. Luis coughed into his sleeve. We need 20 more minutes. We have 10. They worked faster. Daniel crawled along the assembled structure, testing every connection with his own weight. When he reached the outer end, he looked across the gap. The opposite rooftop seemed close enough to touch. It also seemed impossibly far away. Firefighters had anchored a rescue rope to a steel frame on their side. One of them threw the weighted end toward Horizon Tower. The first throw fell short. The rope disappeared into the darkness below. They pulled it back and tried again. The second throw reached the edge. Luis caught it. Cheers rose from both rooftops. Daniel tied the rescue rope to the front of the trusses. This will help guide it, he said. When we push, they pull. What if it twists? Mark asked. Then we correct it. What if it falls? Daniel looked at him. Then we find another way. Everyone understood there was no other way. Workers lined up behind the trusses. Daniel climbed onto the left side and clipped his harness to a column. Push slowly, he ordered. The structure began moving. The metal pipes beneath it rolled forward. 5 feet of truss extended into open air. Then 10. Wind struck the exposed section. The bridge shifted sideways. Stop. Everyone froze. Daniel pulled the left guide rope. Firefighters on the other building pulled from their side. The structure straightened. Again, the workers pushed. 15 feet. 20. The far end began to drop under its own weight. Daniel watched the angle. Carefully. Lift the back. Several workers forced steel bars beneath the rear section and raised it. The front climbed. 25 feet. 28. The end struck the concrete wall of the neighboring roof. For one hopeful second, it rested there. Then a gust pushed it sideways. The truss slipped. Workers screamed. Daniel threw his full weight against the guide rope. Luis grabbed it beside him. The far end hung inches below the rooftop edge. Firefighters leaned over, trying to reach it. Pull, Daniel shouted. Every worker on horizon pulled the rear section backward while the firefighters lifted the front with ropes. The aluminum scraped against concrete. Slowly, the end rose. 1 inch. 3. 6. Then it slid over the rooftop wall. Firefighters dragged it several feet on a solid ground and immediately secured it with chains. A cheer exploded from the trapped workers. Daniel remained silent. He inspected the horizon anchors one final time. For heavy cables wrapped around reinforced columns. 2 supported the bridge. 2 served as independent safety lines. Send the injured first, he said. A painter named David had broken his ankle when the staircase collapsed. Workers secured him to a rescue board. Daniel clipped the board to a pulley line. Firefighters pulled from the far side while 2 workers guided it across. The bridge shook, but it held. Next came a security guard suffering from smoke inhalation. Then an electrician with burns across both hands. One by one, the injured crossed. Every successful rescue brought relief. Every delay allowed the fire to move closer. By the time the 10th person reached the other building, flames appeared near the eastern side of the mechanical level. Workers used extinguishers to push them back. We're losing the floor, Mark said. Daniel checked the bridge anchors. They're still strong. Temperature is rising. I know. Maria, a cleaning supervisor, stood near the edge trembling. I can't do this. Daniel approached. You can. I'm afraid of heights. So am I. She stared at him. You work on skyscrapers. That doesn't mean I enjoy falling from them. Despite herself, Maria laughed. Daniel clipped her harness onto the cable. Don't look down. Look at the person waiting for you on the other side. Her husband was one of the maintenance workers already across. He knelt near the edge, shouting encouragement. Maria crawled onto the bridge. Her body shook so badly that the planks rattled beneath her. Keep moving, Daniel called. One hand, one knee, then the other. Halfway across, she stopped. I can't. Yes, you can. The wind, listen to my voice. She raised her head. You are not alone, Daniel said. Everyone here is holding this bridge with you. Maria looked back. Dozens of workers stood behind Daniel, gripping guide ropes and anchor lines. She took another step, then another. When she reached the opposite roof, her husband pulled her into his arms. The workers on horizon cheered. Daniel sent the others in groups according to strength and condition. The youngest workers crossed between experienced ones. Those who were calm helped those who were panicking. No one complained about the order. 40 people escaped. Then 45. The flames reached the storage area. Smoke reduced visibility to several feet. Daniel checked his phone. No signal. The screen still showed Emily's message. Don't forget our bridge tonight. He placed the phone back inside his jacket. We have 8 left, Mark said. Go. Mark shook his head. After the crew. You're part of the crew. Another explosion rolled through the building. One of the anchor cables snapped. The bridge dropped several inches. Everyone froze. Daniel inspected the remaining cables. We still have 3. Is that enough? Luis asked. It has to be. 2 more workers crossed. Then another. 5 remained. Mark crawled onto the bridge. Halfway across, a burning sheet of insulation tore loose from the upper floor and swept through the gap. It struck the safety cable. Flames raced along the protective covering. Move, Daniel shouted. Mark crawled faster. Firefighters pulled him onto the roof. The burning material fell away, but part of the safety line had been damaged. Daniel tested it. It won't hold another fall. Luis looked at the remaining workers. What do we do? Use the second line. That's supporting the bridge. We still have 2 main anchors. Daniel transferred the harness clips to the remaining support cable. The next worker crossed safely. 4 remained. An apprentice named Noah stepped toward the bridge. He was 19 years old. His face was pale beneath the soot. My mother thinks I'm already home, he whispered. Then let's not make her wrong. Daniel said. Noah crawled forward. 10 feet from the far side, the bridge shifted violently. A connection plate near horizon had begun to tear. Daniel grabbed a wrench and tightened the nearest clamp. The metal was hot enough to burn through his gloves. Luis poured water from a bottle over the joint. Noah reached the roof. 3 remained. A welder named Samuel crossed next. Only Daniel, Luis, and a maintenance worker named Eric were left. Eric coughed uncontrollably. You go, Daniel said. Eric crawled onto the bridge. He made it halfway before collapsing. His harness held him against the planks. Eric, Luis shouted. There was no response. Firefighters tried pulling the cable, but Eric's boot had become trapped between 2 crossbars. Daniel clipped on his harness. Luis blocked him. No, he's stuck. I'll go. You have a newborn son. You have Emily. Daniel looked at him. We both have reasons to come back. Then stop acting like only your life is available to sacrifice. The words struck Daniel harder than the heat. Luis continued. You taught me that a crew protects each other. That includes you. Daniel hesitated. Then he nodded. We go together. They crawled onto the bridge. Wind shook the structure beneath them. Smoke curled around the trusses. Daniel reached Eric first and lifted his shoulders. Luis freed the trapped boot. Eric opened his eyes weakly. I can't breathe. You don't need to talk, Daniel said. Just move. They positioned Eric between them. Daniel pushed from behind. Luis pulled from the front. The bridge groaned. The torn connection plate widened. On Horizon's side, one of the remaining cables began slipping around the column. Workers on the opposite roof shouted. Hurry! Luis reached the far side. Firefighters grabbed Eric and pulled him over the wall. Daniel was still 10 feet away when the second anchor failed. The horizon end of the bridge dropped. Daniel slammed against the truss. His harness caught him. The bridge now hung at a steep angle between the buildings. He looked upward. Luis leaned over the rooftop edge. Daniel, I'm here. Climb. Daniel tried. His left leg was trapped between the side rails. The bent metal pressed against his knee. Below him, the burning tower glowed through smoke. The final anchor cable creaked. Firefighters lowered a rescue rope. Daniel reached for it. The wind pushed it away. They tried again. This time he caught the loop and fastened it around his chest. Pull. The rope tightened. Pain exploded through his ribs. His leg remained trapped. It won't move, he shouted. Luis began climbing down the tilted bridge. Stay there, Daniel ordered. Luis ignored him. You're going to break the cable. Then we'd better be fast. He reached Daniel and forced his shoulder beneath the twisted rail. On 3, Luis said. They pushed together. The metal moved slightly. Not enough. The final anchor cable snapped another inch loose. Again, they pushed. Daniel's leg came free. The sudden movement sent both men swinging against the truss. Luis's harness clip broke. He slipped. Daniel caught his wrist. For one terrible moment, Luis hung over the city with no safety line. Daniel's injured leg burned with pain. His shoulder felt as though it might tear apart. Luis looked down, then back at Daniel. Don't let go. Daniel tightened his grip. I'm not planning to. The firefighters pulled Daniel's rescue rope. As Daniel rose, he held Luis with both hands. Luis used his free arm to grab the truss. Together they climbed. 5 feet. 3. 1. Hands reached over the rooftop edge. Firefighters grabbed Luis first. Then Daniel. The moment Daniel's body cleared the wall, the final cable tore free. The bridge fell. It twisted once in the air before disappearing into the smoke below. No one spoke. Luis rolled onto his back. Daniel lay beside him, struggling to breathe. Mark ran over. Count everyone. We have them, a firefighter said. Count. Mark looked around the roof. He counted once. Then again. 53. Daniel closed his eyes. Everyone. Everyone. Only then did he allow himself to stop fighting the pain. The last thing he heard before losing consciousness was Luis laughing through tears. You still owe your daughter a bridge. Daniel woke in a hospital room the next afternoon. Emily sat beside him holding his hand. Her eyes were red. You're late, she said. His voice came out rough. For what? My bridge. Daniel tried to smile. I had to build another one first. She began crying. He reached toward her, but pain stopped him. Emily carefully leaned forward and hugged him. You promised you would come home. I know. You almost didn't. But I did. She pulled back. You can't keep doing this. Doing what? Saving everyone. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. I didn't save everyone. What are you talking about? They saved each other. He told her about the workers holding the anchor ropes, about Maria crossing despite her fear, about Luis climbing down when Daniel was trapped, about firefighters pulling until their hands bled. No bridge stands because of one piece, he said. Every part carries weight. Emily looked down at his scarred hands. Still sounds like you saved them. Daniel shook his head. I just noticed where the bridge needed to go. The Horizon fire dominated the news for weeks. Videos of the improvised bridge spread around the world. Reporters called Daniel a hero. The mayor offered him a medal. The construction company offered him a promotion. Daniel accepted none of the attention easily. At the hospital press conference, a reporter asked, "What gave you the courage to risk your life?" Daniel considered the question. He looked at Emily, then at Luis, whose arm was wrapped in a bandage. Finally, he faced the cameras. I was afraid the entire time. The reporters became silent. Courage isn't the absence of fear, he continued. It's deciding that someone else matters more than your fear. Another reporter asked, "Do you consider yourself a superhero?" Daniel smiled. "No, but you built a bridge through fire and saved 52 people. 53 people worked together to survive. People are calling you a real-life hero." Daniel looked at the heavy work boots beside his hospital bed. "Real heroes don't wear capes," he said. "They wear whatever they had on when somebody needed help." That sentence appeared in newspapers the next morning. After Daniel recovered, he returned to construction, but not to heavy labor. The fire had damaged his knee and shoulder permanently. Instead, he became a safety instructor. On the first day of every class, he placed the bent bolt from the Horizon support frame on the table. "This nearly killed people," he told the workers. Then he placed a photograph of the bridge beside it. "This saved people." He pointed to the bolt. Both stories began because someone paid attention. He taught apprentices to inspect every connection. He taught supervisors that schedules could be repaired, but families could not. He taught workers to speak when something felt wrong, even when powerful people wanted silence. Years passed. Emily attended the architecture camp, then university, then graduate school. She became an architect who designed schools, hospitals, and affordable housing. Every building she created followed one principle: people before appearance. When she completed her first major community project, she invited Daniel to the opening. The building was not tall. It did not shine like the Horizon Tower, but it contained safe apartments for families who had spent years without permanent homes. Children ran through wide hallways. Elderly residents sat near sunny windows. Every emergency exit was easy to reach. Every railing was secure. Every support connection had been checked twice. Above the entrance stood a small metal plaque. "A building is only as strong as the people it protects." Daniel read it quietly. "You remembered." Emily smiled. "I remember everything." An elderly woman approached him. "Are you Daniel Brooks?" "Yes. My grandson works construction. He took your safety class." Daniel nodded. "He comes home every evening and checks his little boy's bicycle helmet twice." The woman smiled. "He says you taught him that being careful is one way of loving people." Daniel looked across the courtyard. Families were carrying boxes into their new homes. "No," he said softly. He already knew. I just gave him the words. Many years later, Daniel retired completely. On his final day at the training center, workers filled the classroom. Luis stood in the front row. His newborn son had become a tall young man preparing to enter engineering school. Daniel placed the bent bolt on the table one last time. "I spent my life building things," he said. "Walls, floors, towers, bridges." He looked at the faces around him. "But the most important things we build can't always be seen. Trust, responsibility, courage, the belief that another person's life is worth protecting." He picked up the bolt. "Buildings will eventually fall." He touched the old photograph of the bridge. "But what you teach another person may keep standing long after you are gone." When Daniel died peacefully at the age of 81, hundreds of workers attended his funeral. So did firefighters, engineers, teachers, families who lived in buildings Emily had designed. The 53 survivors of the Horizon fire sat together. Emily stood before them holding an old piece of fabric. When she was 6 years old, she had tied that towel around her father's shoulders and called it a superhero cape. She unfolded it carefully. "My father never wore this," she said. A gentle laugh moved through the room. "He said heroes didn't need capes." Her voice trembled. For most of my life, I thought the night of the fire was the moment that made him a hero. She looked at the people before her. But I was wrong. He was a hero every morning he woke before sunrise to provide for his family. He was a hero every time he stopped unsafe work, even when it made people angry. He was a hero every time he taught a young worker to come home safely. He was a hero when he let others help him. And he was a hero when he built a bridge, not because he wanted to be remembered, but because people needed a way across. Emily folded the towel. My father taught me that heroism is not a costume. It is a choice. The following year, a pedestrian bridge opened across the river. Emily had designed it to connect a poor neighborhood with schools, hospitals, and public transportation on the other side. At the center of the bridge was a small inscription. No statue, no photograph, no cape, only words. For those who notice, for those who speak, for those who stay, for those who help others cross. On opening day, thousands of people walked across. Children ran ahead. Parents pushed strollers. Workers traveled toward new jobs. Nobody knew the bridge had been named in Daniel's memory. That was exactly how Emily wanted it. As the sun set, she stood alone at the center and looked toward the distant horizon tower. She remembered her father's rough hands. She remembered his tired smile. She remembered him saying that every line in his palm went somewhere. Now she knew where they had led. One line had led to a frightened crew above a burning city. One had led to a classroom filled with young workers. One had led to safe homes for families. And one had led to this bridge. Daniel had never flown. He had never worn a mask. He had never believed he was fearless. He had simply noticed when someone needed help. Then he had shown up. Across the city, ordinary people were doing the same. A firefighter entered a burning room. A nurse stayed beside a frightened patient. A teacher bought food for a hungry child. A worker stopped a machine after hearing the wrong sound. A father woke before sunrise and packed 2 sandwiches. No cameras followed them. No crowds learned their names. They did not wear capes. They wore uniforms, work boots, aprons, jackets, and tired expressions. They carried fear. They carried responsibility. Sometimes, they carried one another. Emily placed her hand on the bridge railing. Behind her was where she had come from. Ahead was where she needed to go. Beneath her stood a structure built by hundreds of ordinary hands. And in the fading light, she finally understood the full meaning of her father's life. The world did not need people who could fly. It needed people who refused to walk away. It needed people who listened when others ignored the warning. People who built a path when no path remained. People who reached back after they had crossed. Real heroes did not wear capes. They showed up. And when the moment came, they helped others get home.